Okay. Well, then it's my pleasure to introduce John. John's the Chief Marketing Officer with Demand Metric. We started partnering with Demand Metric about 2 years ago or so. They're a market research firm, and they're actually one of the key places where places like American Marketing Association, et cetera, looks for their content. We're happy to be able to be also in a content relationship with them. Can we say that? We're in a content relationship. And we're able to take their documents and tools, et cetera, and deliver it out to the association market as well. So we've done great work together. So John, please, all
Thanks,
yours.
Suzanne. All right. So welcome, everyone. Welcome, like Suzanne said, to our virtual attendees as well. Let's just make sure slides are playing here. Okay. So today I'm here to talk about the state of digital marketing and associations. And before we get started, I just have to say that, the first stop in this roadshow was in New York City. HighRoad Solution did a great job of picking a really cool venue. This one, for me, just blew it right out of the water. Last night, I arrived at my hotel, opened up the window, and there were literally fireworks going off over Navy Pier. So I don't know if Suzanne called in that favor or what, but it was pretty impressive. So today is all about being innovative, and we're looking to share best practices. Like Suzanne said, we want this to be an interactive day. So if you have questions, stop me at any time. Happy to talk through some of the research that I'm going to present. At times you might feel like you're drinking from a fire hose, and so if that is the case, then you can slow me down. There's a lot of data here, but it's all really important stuff. So today in the session, I'm going to answer a simple question, and something that maybe you can think about, right out of the gates. The question is, what grade would the CEO or the board give marketing? And it's a really interesting question. It formed the basis for a research study that we just recently conducted that I'm going to talk a little bit about. Most importantly, we were able to identify what separates the best-in-class marketers from the rest of the pack. Then we're going to review the state of digital marketing and associations. And just by show of hands, who here has seen the research study that we put together with HighRoad Solution? Okay, so a good number of you. Awesome. All right. If you haven't, I would strongly encourage you to go out and download it. I'm going to talk about that in just a few minutes. And I'm going to follow up with an action plan on how to get an A in marketing. A little bit about me. I'm a partner in the CMO at Demand Metric. You can see some of my responsibilities listed there. And ultimately, we are a member organization as well. We've got 70,000 marketers that are part of our membership. This is a list here of some of our pride and joy. But we also cater to SMBs as well. So companies of all sizes use Demand Metric. So in May of 2015, we wanted to find out what grade would the CEO give marketing. And with our partner, who is Vision Edge Marketing, we put together this marketing performance management report. And there were hundreds of marketers that actually responded to this question. And as marketers, our job is to find, keep, grow, and maintain the value of our customers, or in the case of associations, our members. And so this simple question, was answered by a large group of people who gave themselves an A, B, C, or D. What I want to do is just kind of talk through how marketers measured up. And it turns out 1/5 of marketers responded and reported saying that they deserved an A in marketing. And so for the purpose of today's presentation, we're going to call this group the value creators. B's, 31%, these are the sales enablers, and C's and D's, these are the campaign producers. So what we're able to do, because this study has taken place over such a long period of time, is we're able to actually look at historical trends, seeing where we're actually moving the needle. So looking at each of these groups under the microscope, and try and, I guess, in a sense, relate to some of these kind of challenges that the C's and D's are facing. And if you can't, then that's great news. So the C's and D's are not in a very strategic position. And so they tend to fly by the seat of their pants. What's happening in a lot of these cases is that marketing is very response-driven. So sales is essentially asking marketing for leads oftentimes, and marketing spins up a campaign, they execute, they toss these leads over the fence, and they just sit there waiting for the next campaign, for the next request to come through. So it's not very strategic in nature. There's a ton of politics that's going on in these cases, and funding is a roller coaster. And the way that we know this is because funding is often just incrementally more or less than what the department received the previous year. So marketing is viewed as an expense, and when it's time for budget cuts, the CFO looks directly to marketing, and there's no data to protect marketing from not receiving additional funding. So this is obviously where you don't want to be. With the Bs, we're starting to see some metrics in place, which is good, but these metrics are vanity metrics. They're talking about how busy marketing is, and as marketers, we're really busy, but not actually what we're producing. So there's no direct correlation to revenue whatsoever. We're also finding that marketing is very operational, and that's not a bad thing. We're going to talk a little bit about the importance of having a marketing operations function, but it's not allowing marketing to focus on the bigger picture and to include strategy. Funding's still a roller coaster here, and marketing is viewed primarily as an expense. And lo and behold, the A's. So this is where we all really want to be. At least, a lot of the members that we work with, they strive to become an A, to be a value creator within the organization. And this is where data that's being produced is actually being used to inform the CMO to make smarter decisions. And marketing in this case is a strategic asset. So without it, revenue would suffer. So there's a true correlation there. Ultimately, the value creators have a seat at the big table. They can influence decisions, and funding is based on a business case. So with the value creators, the conversation is completely different. Instead of just having budget that's just a little bit more or less than what you got last year, what's happening in the case of the value creators is a business case is put together, and the conversation kind of goes like this. So marketing, if we give you X amount of dollars, what will you give back? And in the case of the value creators, they can answer that question with precision, which is pretty powerful in any organization. So what we found in this study is really there's a foundation and 4 pillars here. I think hopefully a lot of you will be able to relate to these. At the basis, the foundation of success to be a value creator is culture. And then the 4 pillars are measure, plan, alignment, and operations. And what you see here before you, these are 2 polar opposites, right? Where culture in your association acts as a barrier versus when it acts as a catalyst. And when culture is a barrier, you suffer from the tyranny of the urgent. You're just focused on what you need to do. Versus being able to work on what's important, to try new things, to learn from your mistakes. That's ultimately where we all want to get to. And in order to get there, you need to be able to trust data, and you need to operate in a transparent environment, because that's what really the value creators thrive on, because transparency goes hand in hand with accountability. And so value creators love having accountability for their actions versus the campaign producers are kind of scared of the accountability. They don't want people to know what's actually going on. When we talk about these pillars, I'm going to go through this pretty quickly because I really want to focus on the state of digital and association specifically. But the first pillar here is measurement. And our value creators were far better at measuring. So one of the key differences here that we noted was when a value creator sets out to work on anything, the first question they ask themselves is, how are we going to measure this campaign? That's question number 1. Before anything actually starts, that's what they need to know. Whereas the sales enablers and campaign producers, that question comes up later on in the planning process. Speaking of planning, the second pillar here is plan, and value creators are far more likely to have an improvement plan in place. And I'm from Toronto right now. The Pan American Games are taking place there, lots of athletes, and the athletes that are in the city all have a plan, right? And what they're able to do is they're always refining their plan, and it's what allows them to execute more effectively. There's no difference when it comes to marketing. You need to have a plan. You always have to be trying to improve that plan, working it. And again, that allows for a certain amount of accountability. This is an important pillar here, alignment. And there's been lots of conversation about sales and marketing alignment, if you follow any MarTech vendors. Ultimately, this conversation is a little bit different. This is alignment with the leaders' priorities. So what's interesting about the value creators is that their agenda and the C-suites is one and the same. It's not, the agenda or the priorities aren't we want to get X amount of Facebook followers. There's true alignment to business objectives in this case. So, and finally, operations. I'm going to spend a little bit more time here because what we found is that value creators had the presence of a marketing operations function. They were far more likely to have this. And here's a list of common operations functions that we found in the value creator group. And when you look at this list, you notice that a lot of these functions are very strategic in nature. They're not necessarily just focused on being tactical. And one of the call-outs for us when looking at comparing within associations was marketing automation and technology. So we're going to circle back around to that when we talk about the state of digital and associations. But this was an interesting note for us. So ACE function is a center of excellence. And one of the practical manifestations of having a center of excellence is that it houses a marketing operations function. And marketing operations function allows it to maintain a core focus and to manage data. And so what happens in a center of excellence is there's sharing of best practices and kind of that culture, learning from your mistakes. This is obviously an excellent platform for that, a good place to kind of bounce ideas off of your peers. This is more kind of an internal focus. And I know that Neil has a great presentation a little bit later today about using some technology for training purposes and so on and so forth. So it's interesting to note that they function as a center of excellence, and ultimately what it comes down to is this group of A's, the value creators. They get results, and not just any results, not just how many people came out to an event, for example. We noted that it was key business areas that they were getting results in, much more so than the sales enablers or the campaign producers. So things like customer and member retention, they were able to measure that, and they were able to speak the language of the business. So why does all this matter? Well, we want to take a look at how associations stack up. So in November, we explored the topic. I know now some of you have already read the report, which is awesome. I'm going to talk a little bit in more detail about some of the results. The good news is there's a 2015 report coming soon, and it'll be launched at the ASAE Annual in Michigan on August 8th. But because you're here today, you're going to get a bit of a sneak peek with some of the trends that we're seeing. And really the goal of this study is to figure out what approaches associations are using, what's producing the best results. We wanted to figure out how member organizations perceive the communications that associations are emitting. And I can say that not everything that we're seeing right now from the new data is good. So there's still room for improvement. Again, a day like today can really go a long way in helping move the needle. So this study breakdown, we had over 470 responses, 200 complete responses. We've got another 200 responses, so there's lots of data coming together. I don't even know if there's any other resource where there's this much information on digital marketing within associations. So this is really important research, and we appreciate those of you who took this survey for taking the time out of your schedules to participate. We take the data in its raw form, we run it through SPSS. That's what allows us to ensure statistical validity and also to develop some unique insights and views based on what we're seeing. There's an awesome infographic. It's a short hit. If you haven't seen it, definitely I would recommend. I can circulate the URL afterwards. I was going to play it today, but I don't want to screw up anything. So yeah, it's also a great way to share some of this research with a peer or a colleague without sending them, a huge report. And it might be a good way of communicating, some of your thinking on the topic. So it is an ongoing study. We just closed things out, but we will be fielding it again. And if you like coffee as much as I do, then you'll be rewarded with a gift certificate for taking it. So, and like I said, we're starting to see that associations are on the wrong side of the digital marketing divide. So to start things off, we wanted to figure out the perception of effectiveness of digital marketing within associations. And this is going to be a very important comparison tool for the rest of the presentation. what we found is that, let's just forward here, 75% of respondents said that their marketing was somewhat effective or very effective, which I can tell you from a lot of research that we've done, that's a very high number. So off to a good start. This year, the overall effectiveness rating is down. And so it's down slightly, but the bottom line is that it's not up. So we're starting to trend in the wrong direction right out of the gates. The next step was marketing and communication efforts. And this is an important thing to measure because those, this question in particular, those communications really influence how members perceive an association. And respondents said that communications were somewhat sometimes relevant and professional, or always relevant and professional, to the tune of 88%. So again, that's a promising response rate. New data is saying that this number is decreasing in always relevant and professional communications. I spent some time the other day trying to think through why this might be, and it could just be simply, volume. We're asked to do so much. We want to really try and stay in touch and keep those lines of communication open with our members. And, maybe it sacrifices quality. So it could come down to that quality over quantity type debate. We don't really know. Like I said, we've just got this data. But again, another trend that's headed in the wrong direction. When we look at capabilities, strategy and planning is the top capability, which is awesome. That's what that's what we really wanted to see. That really needs to be at the forefront. Other callouts here: member engagement, public relations and thought leadership, and retention. And so what we felt with this is that, our key takeaway is that you need to lead with strategy and planning, but you also have to focus on these three core main areas here. And in fact, engagement, retention, and public relations thought leadership were directly linked to overall marketing effectiveness. So certainly very important. New data, we have a 10% increase year to date over market research and intelligence gathering. And we felt like that was a win. So we got a green arrow going up finally. Because that is what we would consider a strategic function. When you're doing something like market research, that's usually getting data and doing some level of analysis and interpretation. So we felt pretty strongly about that. Minimal movement here overall, so pretty positive. And there is a gap, right? So when we take a look at that 75%, the highly effective group, they rated strategy and planning as number one in terms of their capabilities. And you can see the polar opposite here, the low effective group, the 25%. I mean, they had a capability rank of 5, so that was the least important to them. This is one of my favorite slides. So when we start looking at the tactics that are being used by association marketers, email and event marketing are at the top of the list here. And like Suzanne said, Steve has a great presentation on how you can get even more out of your events later on today, followed by social. And that's an interesting one for me. I've got my own opinion on social media marketing, but I'll reserve that for another time. When we talk about and look at the effectiveness of these tactics, we see the same top two, right? Email marketing, events. Then things start changing a little bit. And I'm going to call out here social quickly because there's a misalignment, right? We've got 97% of respondents are using social media marketing. When we look at its effectiveness rank, only 50, I don't have my glasses on, 55% are saying that it's an effective tactic to use. So that's a concern for me, right? We need to do a better job of aligning the tactics that we're using with their overall effectiveness. Content marketing is another interesting one for us too. A lot of associations are using content, which is great. It's really important to use. Higher in the effectiveness category, but there's still room for improvement there. And in fact, when we look at the results from this, the most recent results of the survey, we're finding that social media marketing effectiveness is down even further. So that could be a knowledge gap there as well. There could be some education needed, or maybe it's just a case of everyone else is doing, has a Facebook page, so we need to do it too, or making investments in social, we need to do it as well, without really thinking through and putting a formal plan and strategy in place. So the content gap, this was an important one because so many of those other tactics stem from having great content, things that are shareable, things that your association members value. And the highly effective group certainly has a higher rating when it comes to the usage of content. They found it more important. They were having more success with it. It was more effective for them. And the difference here is 36%. And that is a significant difference for us, so something that certainly stood out in our analysis. When we look at the digital portfolio, there are lots of different things being used here when it comes to digital. A few ones that jumped out. Email newsletters was at the top of the list. I'm assuming pretty much everyone in the room probably has an email newsletter. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. During the 2014 version of this study, the one that we're talking to here today, we called out email preference centers. That was something that a lot of associations did not have. They were just sending out the same communications to the same lists essentially, and not allowing respondents to kind of self-select for things that were important to them. And that was a concern. But also marketing automation ranked very, very low. And that was alarmingly low for us because it's 20% is about a third of what we're seeing on the private side within corporations. And this technology has been adopted by so many MarTech companies, most of them by now, that we thought that that was pretty interesting observation. Also because when we looked at our marketing performance management study, the top performing value creators had all adopted this type of technology and were all using it. So that one certainly kind of stood out to us, and it kind of, the alarm bells went off, I guess you could say. And that could be because, you know, maybe not everyone knows about marketing automation. But if you don't know what the technology is all about, Suzanne has a really cool presentation about kind of taking through a day in the life of a technology-empowered marketer, a modern marketer. And it's one that, you know, I'm really looking forward to. When we talk about the budget line items here, search engine marketing was really low, and same with inbound marketing. And again, inbound marketing is kind of a concept that maybe not everyone's up to speed on. But both of these things do something special. They draw traffic into your website. And it's just interesting that website management was one of the top rated budget line items, same with website design. And I'm a firm believer in, you know, you can have the nicest, flashiest looking website in the entire world, but if no one's visiting it, then it's, you know, effectively useless. And so we were a bit surprised that those two investment areas were so low. The good news, email preference centers are on the rise across the board with association marketers, so that's positive. Inbound is down, so that was surprising for us to see this in this year's results, but hopefully we'll be able to kind of provide some rationale behind why that is. And so when we look at some of the metrics that are being reported on by association marketers, click-through rates, open rates, these are both related to email campaigns. They were at the top of the list. And the concern with these two metrics is that, I'm not to say that you shouldn't be measuring them, but they're vanity metrics. They go about showing, you know, some level of results, and reporting on something is probably better than reporting on nothing. But you can't tie them to revenue. You can't tie them to member retention generally. And so there's a little bit of a concern there. When it comes to conversions, this is where we're starting to get a little bit closer, because this is more of a valued activity. There's a conversion that's taking place, and so what we found is that there's, you know, a gigantic gap between what's kind of low-hanging fruit for measuring versus what requires a little bit more thought to be put in, how you can actually get at a metric like conversions. And reporting is important. Excel is highly used by associations. Excel has a special place in my heart because when we started this business, we developed Excel spreadsheets like dashboards for people to, you know, plug in some numbers. And I don't have anything against Excel. The problem is that a lot of people don't know how to use it to create predictive models within Excel. And so, if you just have a basic spreadsheet with rows and columns, it's not going to tell you anything. You need to be able to have some level of analysis in the data, and so you need to eventually move beyond Excel. It's a good starting point, but there's a lot more that's available now than 8 years ago when we started Demand Metric and put a focus on using Excel as a technology for doing reporting. And so hopefully you'll be able to, throughout the day, see some of the different ways that modern marketers are capturing data and really leveraging it for predictive insights. Excel is on the rise. That could be partly due to our partnership, who knows? But again, I think there's room for improvement in using other technologies. So in summary here, what we're seeing is that association marketers lagging behind their corporate counterparts in a lot of different areas. We were really happy to see that strategy and planning was the most frequently cited capability for association marketers. But when we start looking at some of this trend data, we're seeing that association marketers are still falling on the wrong side of the digital marketing divide. So how can we make some gains here? How can we improve things? Well, again, the video that the infographic that we have put together aligns pretty well to what I've got here in 5 key focus areas. The first one is executive leadership. And we know that associations oftentimes there are silos. These silos need to be broken down. There's fragmentation. There are ownership issues. What this comes down to is that marketing leaders need to acquire business acumen. They need to talk the language of the business. And basically, they need to understand the entire business, and they need to know it well. And the difference here with the value creators is that they think of themselves as business people first, almost that entrepreneurial mindset, and then marketers second. And so we found that is actually one of the key success drivers here, is to take a holistic view of the business and not just one kind of area. Next up, strategic orientation. And what we found here is that there was a significant amount of reliance on data that marketing was providing. And so this is how you know if you have business acumen. If other leaders in the organization are coming to you in the marketing department saying, we need to figure out areas of investment, we need to uncover new opportunities, if you're able to have a strategic orientation, then you can become a key supplier of data to the entire organization and really move the needle. The third area of focus here is customers. And this is kind of a weird chart, but it's essentially a heat map. And what we're seeing is the value creators are far better at understanding their customers or their members, in the case of associations, where they're able to identify those that are at risk of defection. So who's going to leave us? They understand the whole experience, the member experience. And I'm going to take a quick break because my computer is running low on battery and I left my plug up there. So anyone have any questions while we're kind of waiting? Sorry, Steve, I think it's just, yeah, it's probably, we're sitting at 10%. No, that's not it. No. Yeah, that's the one. Oh, it's similar. You know what? We'll just try and make it through then. So if this shuts down, then you gave it, well. The fourth area of focus here is skills. And skills, this is an important part. I'm a firm believer in you need to have the right people, processes, and technologies in place in order to be successful. And Tom's got a great presentation on making sure that you find the right, I don't think this is the right one either. Thanks, Liz. It was a good try. Well, it's a Sony, it's a PC. I know that this thing, when it says 10%, it could go like that. So anyway, you need to have the right people, processes, and technologies in place. And marketing skills are evolving at a rapid rate. It's like we're in a position at Demand Metric as an analyst firm to see some of the new technologies coming into the market, and literally like it's changing every single day. I'll do a demo of a product one day and I'm like, oh, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen for doing B2B display advertising. 2 days later, there'll be something that even blows it out of the water. So being able to find the right people and retain the right people is really, really important, and more so than ever before. So that has to be an area of focus. And finally, metrics, and this kind of relates as well to planning and making sure that there's, the right data to support marketing, the right data in place to support business processes. And again, the value creators were far better at tracking performance and measuring these things than any other group or category. So the payoff, if you can do all of these things, is credibility. And ultimately, this is where we want to get to. We want to have credibility within our marketing departments. We want to be seen as business leaders, and we want to be able to really contribute. And so if you can follow those areas of focus and kind of work on them one by one and continue to learn and continue to push the boundaries really of what's capable within your association, then you can definitely get there. So now we got 7% low. That's pretty much it for me. By default, I'm going to get the boot here, but I know, Suzanne, we're going to have to find this before you go on. So, yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been a real pleasure. I'm excited for the day. There are some amazing presentations coming up, and I know that together we're all going to learn a lot. So thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Are there any questions from anyone? I have one question.
Sure
I know, because this is like, by the way, this is the preview for, so the 2015 report of this is going to be launched, let's say in a couple weeks at ASE Annual, which I believe is August 8th through 11th. So everybody will get a copy in your inbox. You guys don't have to register for it. It'll just come to you. But I know one of the key things, not to put you on the spot, but I know one of the things we've been watching that everybody asks me is about budget.
Right.
Have you seen anything changing with the alignment yet between budgeting and the marketing departments and the staffing piece of it? Because everybody wants to know. Here's the question I get all the time. How do we get more money, Suzanne? Right? We want to do marketing automation. How are we getting? Are you seeing anything particular?
I do. Yeah, I've got some in my notes here. So let me just pull them up. I couldn't go through everything because literally our chief analyst who's in Oklahoma, he moonlights as a professor at Oklahoma State University.
When not working on HighRoad studies, right? Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
So when I ask him for things, he usually gives me even more than I could ever imagine. Yeah. So this is what I have. 5% year-to-date decrease in inbound marketing, 11% decrease in social media marketing, 25% decrease in email marketing, 13% decrease in print. Overall, it seems like the trend is decreasing most of the budget categories.
That's interesting. Okay, so we'll have to keep working on that.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think that if you can do a better job of linking effectiveness to investment and building that business case, then it'll be easier to kind of move those numbers
So
up.
that's interesting. So just on a note from that, so what we hear all the time, which is probably one of the absolute key reasons, is that people need the metrics. They don't have the right metrics to prove. Right. They're having a really hard time making the business case for we need to have more we need more dollars to do it and to do it right. So that's interesting. So I'll make sure we talk about that.
Yeah.
Any other questions from anybody in the room? Yeah, please.
About the video,
where
did you say that was located? That's on.
Yeah, Suzanne, do you have that hosted on?
I had a question about the video and where it was located.
Oh, the video's great. Yeah, it's on our blog. It's the easiest place to get it is on the blog, which is blog.highroadsolution.com/blog, not hidden. Or you can go to our website for blog. But yeah, it's right on there. But again, we should post it more often because it's a great video. I forget what a great video. And by the way, you mentioned that you guys made that, right?
We did, yeah.
Okay, because I want to make a plug for that because if there's anything, infographics, are all the rage right now, but infographics are still static. And what we found is that video infographic, doing it in that format, it gets across the message so quickly and easily. And I'm the one that put together the script for it, but Demand Metric took it and ran with it. It was very little work on my part. And so the impact of being able to just tell that story, that entire report in 2 minutes, again, imagine you can now tell the real what's going to be the member life cycle? What's the journey for them if they're a member? Like, what's the value? Like, what does their life look like if they're a member the entire time? Being able to have those type of quick videos out there is probably things we all need to, again, have budget for, but have a huge impact.
Well, just to touch on that,
Yeah.
video, is a really popular content format right now. We're doing some research right now for a company called Vidyard. They're like a video platform provider. And what we're seeing is that the costs of developing video is decreasing because it's just becoming easier to produce. Even live video, Tyler Lessard, who's the CMO over there, was telling me the other day, a lot of the video they do is just filmed on a GoPro camera that you can buy for $500. You don't need to have a full-blown studio anymore in order to produce really high-quality video content. So, but yeah, storytelling is amazing. You did a great job with the scripting of that video. And then it doesn't really cost all that much to take it home and have something that's highly shareable that you can use for your other channels, and that's just a simple way to kind of move the needle.
Yeah, agreed. And just on that part, I think that's a great segue. We're going to take a break, but then I'm going to touch up with that because that's a big part of the changing the culture. Because we're moving, especially in the association world, from having to be a very strict, hello, John, hello, Suzanne, in the video, and it's like, hello, I'm the, executive director, and this is why you should become a member. And that's really now out of, and that took like 12 months and $30,000 to create, that kind of thing. Like, we're past that. We're into like very much the but that's a good way to put it, the GoPro culture of like, just make it quick and dirty. And that's what we're trying to get to the heart of the matter. And it's not so much the pomp and circumstance about it. I think is probably a good segue. So we're going to take a break right now. So everybody go ahead and we'll come back in 15 minutes. There are beverages in the back. There's coffee and tea and whatnot for everybody that is joining us virtually. See you back in 15 minutes. Liz, do you have an actual number on that? Like, what time would that be? 10:35. Okay, so at 10:35 we'll meet back. I think we're a little ahead of schedule, which is unlike us, and I'll talk next, so I'll put us right back on schedule. And we'll meet back for that. And then everybody, if you're in the room, let's go ahead and network. And again, the bathrooms are out to the left. And we'll see you back in 15. Thanks. Thank you, John.